जिंदा खुदा से दिल जो लगाते तो खूब था,
जिंदा खुदा से दिल जो लगाते तो खूब था।
मुर्दा बुतों से जान, मुर्दा बुतों से जान छुड़ाते तो खूब था।
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Can I ask Sayyid Shawai Sikandar for tilawat, please?
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah.
Welcome, sir.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولقد جاءكم يوسف من قبل بالبينات فما زلتم في شك مما جاءكم به حتى إذا هلك قلتم لن يبعث الله من بعده رسولا كذلك يضل الله من هو مسرف مرتاب. Translation. And Joseph did come to you before with clear proofs, but you cease not to be in doubt concerning that which he came to you till. When he died, you said, Allah will never raise up a messenger after him. Thus does Allah judge as lost those who transgress and are doubters. Jazakumullah.
Jazakallah. Right, so today the topic is going to be on why we do not marry outside the Jamaat. We have another topic after that if we get time, but let's see how it goes. And the same thing, I will give a little talk and then we'll open up for any questions and comments, which you can write into the chat board or you can speak as you wish. Right, so why we do not marry outside the Jamaat. This is something which is often raised by our own members and also by people outside. So obviously there must be reasons, and that's what we want to discuss today. So why is it happening? When we look in this particular country, we see that the society encourages courtship. So that is happening all around, and obviously Ahmadis growing up see that happening, see it on TV and everywhere. And of course, in the workplaces, in college, etc., their mixing is very common. And so you don't have the situation like you have maybe in Pakistan, where there is segregation. Here, it very much encourages you to work together, and there is no segregation. So naturally, friendship develops. But whilst you may only want to be a friend with someone from the opposite sex, they may want to take it a bit further. And because there's this curiosity as well, and sometimes even the secrecy that you're doing something behind the back of your parents and things like that, and that you get a thrill out of as well. The desires that obviously build up within us. So therefore, we want to try and maybe go out and have courtship. So this is what's happening. We're finding it happening more and more, unfortunately, these days. Now, okay, so where's the harm in that? Obviously, as Ahmadis, it's our duty to discourage this if we see this happening. But what we're finding is that people actually are encouraging it. They're not discouraging it. Ahmadis and non-Ahmadis. So the group that you go around with, they often are dating themselves and they will push you to go on, why not? It's okay, we can do it. And so this is the problem. Now, of course, when a person goes out with you, they may see a completely different side to what your parents see and things like that. So they often won't see Ahmadi Muslims who are practicing their faith, praying in front of them reading the Quran in front of them. And so therefore they think, well, you're just like anybody else. They don't see any real problem here. But this is what I normally warn people about when they come to me in this sort of situation, that you've got to look beyond yourselves. Yes, you may fall in love and things like that, but you've got to look at what will happen if children come along. And this is especially what the parents are very, very concerned with, because now you might, when you have children come along, you want to raise them as Muslims. And your partner may have not seen anything about Islam, doesn't know anything about Islam. Suddenly they see a completely different person to the one that they got married to. Furthermore, parents, they may feel that they failed with their own child, but they don't want to fail with their grandchildren. They want their grandchildren to be good Muslims. And so they will put pressure on their child that, look, you should raise your child as a Muslim. And so issues start developing. And this is what I try to warn people about, that you've got to look ahead. You can't just look at the present time and say, well, we love each other, that's fine. Problems can arise, serious problems can arise. We've got to consider those things. So how to stop this? The warning signs come, of course, and it's important that when we see those warning signs, then we do something about it. So what Islam encourages us is that we cut at the root of it. And that means that if you start having any feelings with someone on the opposite sex, then don't meet them, or make sure that there are other people present so that it can't develop and go beyond. Likewise, as I said, the Qadam, the Lajna, they know what's going on. I know when I just first came into this Jamaat, and even back in those days, I knew what was going on. And this is a thing that annoys me quite often, that sometimes Qadam and Lajna complain that the Jamaat are very strict and things like that. And I say to them, look, you knew. Why didn't you stop this at the beginning? That's a time to stop it, not allow it to develop and then start complaining later on. So this is a warning which I'm saying here, that any Qadam, any Lajna, if you see something like this happening, where one of your brothers or sisters is having an affair, you should be encouraging them to stop. I know it's difficult. I know you don't want to lose your friend and things like that, but that's your duty. That's what God expects from you. And if you don't do that, then obviously it's going to continue. So this is when I said it is allowed to continue. And then finally it gets to a stage where the boy and girl wants to get married. Then they go to the parents and say, put pressure on the parents that I want to marry outside the Jamaat. And the Jamaat rules are there, and they say, well, look, you can't do this. Is what's going to happen. You can be removed from the Jamaat and things like that. And so then they start complaining, oh, the Jamaat's too strict. Why are you stopping me? But as I said, if you had stopped that at the root, at the very beginning, it wouldn't have come to this issue. Now you put your parents in a lot of problems, that what's going to happen? How are we going to resolve this matter? And so that shouldn't happen. You shouldn't be putting your parents into that position. So it's important that when you start having feelings for someone, that is a warning sign. Move away from it. Okay, so what is the purpose of marriage? And this is also something which we should be thinking about, because in this country, it's all about falling in love and so on and so forth. But of course, we have arranged marriages, and there is a greater purpose towards a marriage. So in Islam, marriage is a very important institution. We look at it that it's a partner for life. As I said, in this country, divorce happens very, very often, and it's a shame. But that shouldn't be the case. We should be looking at not only this world, but the next world. Again, this is something we should think about, that if you're a Muslim, you're looking to paradise. But if you are marrying someone who is not a Muslim, will they join you? It's something you need to think about. It's a serious thing. You shouldn't just dismiss this and say, oh, you know, I'm in love, it's fine. Again, what we expect is that when we have their children, like I say, we want to create a very good Islamic home. This is what we are thinking about, that it's important that we do create that Islamic home and make sure that we are following teachings, because that's what children pick up on. They will see things and then they will follow those things. So this is why we believe that it's very important that the couple have the same belief and outlook. Otherwise, like I say, problems can arise and issues will arise about how you're going to raise the children and so on and so forth. And it can come even stronger than that, where people will even try to make you not religious. So it is an issue and it is very important. So marriage is not just about two people falling in love. Love develops in all marriages, hopefully. But it's important that we look beyond that and strive and always keep striving to win Allah's pleasure. But as I said, the love and desire, these are very strong emotions which can carry us away. So, of course, you will find quite often that when there's a couple who wants to get married, then they're not really worried about the differences. They say, okay, you're a Muslim, I'm a Christian, or whatever. We can get around this. It's not a big problem. But it can be a big problem. Sometimes it is a very big problem, especially when you're marrying another Muslim, that they may not want Ahmadiyyat. They might hate Ahmadiyyat. And so this is how this first began with the Promised Messiah, that he had to protect the Ahmadi girls because they were marrying non-Ahmadi Muslims, and their husbands were forcing them to leave their religion. And so this is how it first began to develop. But obviously, whilst a couple may be able to overcome differences within themselves, like I say, we have to look beyond that. Now, as I said, if one of them is not an Ahmadi, then what do you expect? Do you expect the other one to remain an Ahmadi? The atmosphere in the home, if the person, for instance, is very religious and a Christian, let's say, or Hindu or something like that, and they want to follow their faith, they may be putting a lot of pressure on you, especially if you're a girl, to try to make you leave your faith. Or they may want to do un-Islamic things and encourage you to do those things. And it becomes very difficult for you to remain an Ahmadi. You may want to be an Ahmadi, but every time you pray, pressure comes on. Every time you wear a veil, pressure comes on, and so on and so forth. So this is something which we as parents look at to and consider and think about. But children also need to be thinking about this and understanding why we want them to remain Ahmadis. We want them to marry good Ahmadi people, and so they remain strong in their faith. So as I said, about the children, it is a big concern. And I've seen this and I've raised this up many, many times. I mean, normally when they come to me, this is what I try to get them to think about, that how are you going to raise your children? Are you going to raise your child as an Ahmadi or a non-Ahmadi? Of course, the Ahmadi would want, naturally, for their child to be an Ahmadi Muslim. The parents want their child to be an Ahmadi Muslim. But how's that going to happen? If you do not believe in God, how can you create an Islamic home? How can you take your children to the mosque? So obviously we've got to understand these things. And it goes further. How are you going to teach the Quran? How, let's say, are you going to get your child to wear the veil when the mother doesn't wear a veil? Circumcision. How are you going to get your child to be circumcised? So obviously these are all things which we naturally expect to happen in a Muslim home. But if you married outside an Ahmadi home, these are all issues which can happen. And this is what you've got to think about. Now, of course, as I said, the family, the friends, they will put pressure on you to try to help you to understand these things. Now, it becomes a question on you that will you listen to them? Will you listen to Allah as such? And here also we have the issue of the parents of the opposite partner. They'll be putting pressure on their own child as well. Now let's take a scenario of a Muslim, Ahmadi Muslim marrying a non-Ahmadi Muslim. And obviously they have their customs, they have their beliefs, and they may hate Ahmadiyyat. So even though you are falling in love with the person, their parents will be putting a lot of pressure on their child that this is wrong, you shouldn't be doing that, and get them to leave Ahmadiyyat. They don't accept us as Muslims. So how can you have a marriage like this? Likewise, it could happen even with a Christian family or others, that they put their own beliefs. Maybe if the person is strong, or they may not be strong themselves as a Christian, but the family may be strong in Christians, and they expect their child and their grandchildren to grow up as Christians. That is pressure that is constantly being put on the married couple, which more often than not, leads to divorce. And that's why we, as parents, look into these sorts of things. Then there's the other question. Now, this is normally with, obviously, other Muslims, but will it be done in an Ahmadi mosque? Will it be done by an Ahmadi imam? Now, obviously, sometimes the parents, they try to get the person to become an Ahmadi. And if that person is really believing in Ahmadi, then alhamdulillah. But if they are just becoming an Ahmadi for marriage, it doesn't resolve anything. The same problems will be there. How to raise their children, how to create that Islamic home if they don't really believe. And I've seen this. I've been to places, even in Birmingham. I remember when I first moved to Birmingham, I met one English convert and he openly admitted he's an atheist. Straight away, as soon as I got there, met him, he said, I'm an atheist. And he's not interested in religion, just married, just to have the girl, and now I've got the girl. I'm not going to practice my faith. Yes, I became an Ahmadi, but it's just an Ahmadi by name. I don't care. So again, this is something where when they come to us, we try to teach them about Islam, get them to understand, and try to get them to understand that you should become an Ahmadi only for the belief. There's no guarantee at all. And I often say this to people, that there's no guarantee that if you become an Ahmadi, you're going to marry this girl. That's up between the parents. They want to be looking at you. They want to see whether you are genuine or not. Because if you're not going to the mosque and things like that, why should they marry the daughter to you? So this is a very important thing. Now, again, if you have a marriage in another mosque by another imam, then the rule is very clear. You will be removed from our Jamaat. And that is not just the married couple. If the parents are also attending or encouraging such a thing, they can be removed. And everyone who comes there. Now, I remember one time there was a marriage where I was against it, but anyway, I warned them about these things. They didn't listen. And when the marriage happened, they brought in mixing and things like this. And I think it was nearly 98 Ahmadis got punished because they all attended that function and they didn't leave the function when there was mixing going on and things like that. So it's not just the married couple. It can affect the parents. It can affect everyone. I mean, as people on the Umrah, you have to make sure that that marriage is Islamic and is Ahmadi to how we look at it. Otherwise, you can be removed from your office and so on and so forth. So this is the problems there. And when you're marrying, especially with non-Ahmadi Muslims, there are so many customs which they want to instill, and especially on the wedding day, the music and the dancing and all sorts of, like say, intermixing and things like this will happen there. And if you have agreed to the marriage, it becomes very difficult for you to stop these things. So that's, again, something that begins the marriage and can go on throughout the marriage. As I said, there can be a lot of pressure from the non-Ahmadis. So once you've married and they come to their house and things like that, they can bombard you. They prophesize false, you shouldn't be a follower of him, you should become the true Islam, and so on and so forth. Is this what parents really want? For the sake of pleasing their child, they want their child to lose their faith? Because that can easily happen. This is what we've got to understand. This is why when I marry a couple who wants to get married, I try to get them to understand this and tell them that it's important that they should first make this decision, whether Ahmadi is true or false. And that person, that partner, should declare whether they believe that Ahmadi is true or false. That's the first bit. So if they believe that Ahmadi is false, why are you marrying such a person? So it's very clear then to you that if the partner is saying, I do not believe in Ahmadi, I'm never going to believe in Ahmadi, he's a liar, he's a kafir, and all this sort of thing, Why? Why marry such a person? No matter how much you love that person, it is heading to disaster even before you start. So this is what I try and get a couple to think about, and try to get them to make this sort of declaration, that what they really believe about Ahmadiyya, because that then shows the Ahmadi boy or girl what really is the state of the person that they're marrying to. Of course, they should have been asking this themselves, but often they don't do that. So it becomes a duty of other people to try to get them to understand that. As I said, if a person doesn't really believe in Ahmadiyya, then why? Why are you possibly allowing that person to marry your Ahmadi girl or boy? Because it could easily get them to leave their faith. And is that what you really want? So yes, I know parents, they're put in these positions. They want to please their child. They want to make them happy and so on and so forth. But at the cost of losing their faith, is that what you really want? So sometimes, unfortunately, you've got to be strict and you've got to be firm and get them to understand these things. As I said, we get it quite often that people come up to us saying they want to do the bayat, they want to join Ahmadiyyat. And sometimes they won't mention that they're having a relationship, but it becomes quite obvious. I usually can tell within the first meeting whether it is about marriage or something like that. And simply by just asking them that, how did you know about Ahmadiyya? And then you can see whether it sounds genuine or not. But that's not our issue. Our issue is to try to get that person to become a good Ahmadi, however they're coming into it. But obviously, this is a thing that trying to become an Ahmadi so that they can marry then an Ahmadi boy or girl. The parents normally know about this, other people know about it, but still they try to push this sort of thing. But as I said, unless it's genuine, what is the point? So obviously, we want people to join for the right reasons. And it should not just be for marriage, because if it's not for the right reasons, if they don't truly believe in God, what are you trying to achieve? All it will do is make that person hypocritical and bring in further problems into the marriage, which of course we don't want. We want a marriage to start off on the right step and then develop and become good. So for me, normally I will suggest to them that they take part in the free Islamic course that I run. And this will help them to learn at least about Islam and Ahmadiyyat. Further from that, of course, you can go to many other websites like Al Islam to learn more about Ahmadiyya. But it's important that they take the time, they find out whether what the Jamaat is, and then, like I say, come to this conclusion as to whether Islam is the promised Messiah, Ahmadi, or not. So we want everyone to be following the right path. And although the children may feel, oh, why are you putting so much pressure on? They don't need to make this sort of decision. Often they say, well, after marriage, then we'll get them to accept Ahmadiyya. It's too late at that stage. Once they've married you, why should they join Ahmadiyya? These questions need to be asked before marriage. You need to find out, do they believe in Islam? Do they believe in the Holy Prophet Muhammad? Do they believe in Ahmadiyya? And not just become an Ahmadi, a Muslim, just for marriage, because that, let's say, will not really help anybody. So this is just briefly some of the things the way I see things, of the problems that can arise when you marry outside the Jamaat. So now I'm leaving it up to yourselves to please ask any questions or any comments, and hopefully we can take this a bit more further. So is there any questions?
Assalamu alaikum, Haris. You should have, or Munawar Sab, you should have questions. If not, then the chat, please.
Assalamu alaikum. I got few questions, Rabbi Sab. The first question is, what if my son or daughter still decide to marry outside the Jamaat?
Well, as I said, these are the things which needs to be clear, and you need to, as a parent, find out what the person truly believes. You know, even if it's an Ahmadi, as a parent, you should be looking at that boy, that girl. Is he good for my child? Has he got the piety? Is it going to be a good future or not? This is the responsibility of parents. Now, when you see that a child is not good for your child, then of course you should try to block that and try to get your child to understand. So it's the same when you're marrying outside the Jamaat. As I said, these are the problems that's going to rise. And this is why, especially, I would try to get the married couple to think about the future. Don't just look at now. As for the Jamaat, as I said, if the person is marrying outside the Jamaat, first of all, you need to get permission by Hazur. And then, obviously, if you're going against Jamaat rules, regulations, then, of course, you can be answerable for that. And that can be very, very severe, as I mentioned. So it's important that you talk to your child and try to help them to find a good partner. And we have systems like Rishtanat and things like that. So many times people feel that the parents are not finding a good child for me, so good partner for me. So that's why they say that they are courting and looking outside. But this is not really the way in Ahmadiyya, in Islam. And so it is important that the parents find out from the children, find out when they're ready for marriage, and don't just presume. Sometimes parents, they have a pecking order. They want to get the eldest child married first. But of course, the longer that takes, then the other children are getting older and older. This is why the fourth Caliph said that if a child is ready for marriage, the parents should be finding someone suitable as soon as possible. Forget about even university, careers and things like that, if they're ready for marriage. Because if you don't, then they will look themselves, and that's where the courtship starts. So this is a responsibility of parents, that they have a duty to try to find someone suitable for their child. But of course, I understand problems can arise, and it becomes very difficult for the parents. I do feel for the parents when they're being put into such situations, but obviously we've got to look at what is best for Allah and what Allah wants from us. And as I said, if by marrying a person just because your child loves that person, but it means that they leave their faith, what have you achieved? Will you really be happy with that? I don't think any parent would. So sometimes we have to be a bit firm and try to get through to our children as much as possible. If they don't listen, sometimes you have to keep away from the thing and don't encourage the marriage and don't have anything to do with the marriage, or whatever steps you need to take. Okay, there's a few people who've got their hands up. Do you want us to go to those people first?
Yes, please, Rabbi.
Okay, so Aisha, you have your hand up.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum.
Welcome.
I just want to ask, what are, well, obviously it's not a Jamaat, but what are the mothers of the boys are doing of it? Because there seems to be a lot of women, I mean, pious women. I mean, nobody can enter somebody's heart to know they are pious, but they seem to have women in the Jamaat. I mean, they have their veils and everything, but sometimes the boys or the men, they don't want those women, and they go to outside to marry some Non Ahmadis or some Christians to be on the Jamaat. Why the girls will be there? I mean, as a parent also, especially with a parent with a girl, you feel like the time is going and running out, and sometimes that is why it pushes some of the girls to go outside the marriage. And also sometimes also there is a situation whereby they want preferences, like, oh, I don't like this girl, I don't like this boy because he haven't been this, he haven't been that. So I think the problems lies on the parent itself to advise the children what's the purpose of marriage, and then how you can please Allah rather than pleasing your own self and the status and the home that the woman or the boy comes from. Because I think it's something that the Jamaat is really facing at the moment. And also sometimes some Ahmadi men, I mean, some Ahmadi homes, both the woman and the man, they are all Ahmadis, but there's some attitude they present. Sometimes you feel like somebody's marrying an Ahmadi, but the way the man is treating the woman and the way as so-called people who think that they are Ahmadis, it make you wonder that sometimes it's just a very difficult thing. Anyway, though we are not allowed, but sometimes also the how the men behave at the end of the day, it's also pushed some of the girls who have not even entered into marriage. That why will I be with an Ahmadi who calls himself an Ahmadi who have accepted the promise of Islam? What is the behavior that person is imposing? Why he always listen to Wuzu advice? So that's my question.
Yes, and I agree with you. Obviously, this is one of the problems. And again, that's all a question of taqwa. That's what the Jamaat is trying to do, make sure that the marriage is done properly. You treat your wife with respect and vice versa. As I said, we're living in a non-Islamic country. There is a lot of influence around. And sometimes, as you said, sometimes they see a person who's a non-Muslim behaving much better than how Ahmadis are behaving. And so that attracts them, of course. And as I said before, sometimes the fact that you are a pious Ahmadi Muslim also attracts people that you're something different to what they normally see. So that is important that, again, we try to instill in our own children, in our own people, understanding what a marriage is about. Now, alhamdulillah, these days there is marriage counseling, and it is one of those things which you have to do now before the marriage. And often in the marriage counselors, this is what we try to do. We try to explain what is the expectations of a husband, what's the expectations of a wife, and help them to understand what they should be doing, how they should be behaving in the marriage. But of course, it's up to the couple. We can only explain as we do. The Hazur explains what is the proper way to conduct a marriage and how we should behave as Ahmadis. But if people aren't listening, what can you do? You can only advise. So as a parent, like I say, we should try to find good matches for our children. And the first thing that I always feel is speak to your own child. Find out the likes and dislikes. Of course, they are limited. They don't fully understand themselves, but give you some idea of what is their interest, what they're trying to look for, and try to keep looking for that. Now, like I say, we have the Rishnata system. It doesn't really work as it should do work, but I always think it's a wonderful system, and I wish it would work properly, because the alternative is these sort of dating sites and things like that, and that's not based on taqwa at all. Likewise, we can look around our own community and get other people to look for us and try to find suitable matches. So that's the parent's responsibility, to keep trying to find a good match. And I agree with you that sometimes these customs come in that I want my daughter to marry a multimillionaire or something like that. And it's ridiculous what the expectations, sometimes from the parents, sometimes from the children. Obviously, the Holy Prophet has emphasized on piety, and that's the main thing we should be looking at. And that would resolve a lot of the things that you're bringing up, that if piety is there for the sake of Allah, always bringing Allah into the marriage, then that can make it a very good marriage. So this is what I always try to look for, is piety. And I think that's the most important thing. But unfortunately, there are customs, and of course our Jamaat has come to remove these customs, but they're still there. We know they're still there. We know that's how people sometimes view, or the expectations they view, no matter what Hazur says or what we say, still is there. But hopefully, if you talk with your children and they talk to you, you can find what they want and they can get through what they're looking for, and hopefully you can find a suitable match for them. Prayers, of course, is the most important thing. Keep praying for your children that they do find a good, pious Ahmadi. Okay, Maqsood Saab. Maqsood, you got your hand up. Do you want to speak?
Sorry, I have actually sent my question, so that's all right if you can be asked. Yes, thank you.
Rabbi Sahib, Maqsood Sahib sent a question. He said that Islam allows marriage with Ahle Kitab. Why we Ahmadis do not allow?
What is the Ahle Kitab? Maksud Sab, any ideas who the Ali Kitab is?
Yes, the people who received the book from Allah, which means Christians and Jews.
Okay, so if you look at that verse in the Holy Quran about marrying to the people of the book, it also says that the food of the people of the book is halal for you. So is Christian food halal for you? Are you allowed to eat pork?
No, that's right.
So if the Christians believe that Jesus is a God, is that halal for you?
So
So the people of the book is referring to the Jews. The Jewish food, kosher, is allowed for us. Christian food is not allowed for us. Often people say that the people of the book refers to the Christians, but it's not the case. Christianity, as we said in earlier Tabligh things, came about after Jesus. It was not the religion of Jesus. It's not what he taught. So if you follow what Jesus taught, then that's fine, because he was a Jew. He believed in one God. He believed in following the law of God. So that is fine. But that is not the people of the book. So yes, sometimes the Holy Quran refers to the people of the book being the Christians. But in this matter, in this particular thing of marrying, it's very, very clear that the food, if you just look at the verse, same verse, a bit lower, the food is also lawful for you. It's lawful to the people of the book. It's talking about only the Jews. So that's, again, as I was saying, we have to look at the same spiritual path that we're taking. And although a lot of Muslims hate the Jews, but the spiritual path is the same. They believe in one God, Tawheed, and things like this. They believe in following the commandments of God. So if we are marrying someone who doesn't believe these sort of things, this is where I'm saying issues can come. So often I get people saying that we can marry Christians, but this is how I explain to them that actually, no, the Quran does not allow you to marry Christians. And as it says in the Quran, that even a believing slave or a believing handmaid is better than a disbeliever. And many Christians, unfortunately, they are disbelievers. They don't believe in Allah and they don't believe in Islam. So we've got to understand this as well when we're trying to look for partners. So if we want to marry a Jew, then yes, that's acceptable. The Holy Prophet Muhammad married a Jew, or was formerly from a Jew, became a Muslim, but not Christians, no. Okay, any other questions written down?
Jazakallah.
Rabbi Sahib, we have another question. Are we as Ahmadi allowed to go out and know a person more? This question is with regards to arranged marriages.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. There's no courtship in Islam, but you can have a chaperone, normally the parents. I always think it's very important that you do get to meet each other, and it's allowed, you can meet each other, but it's got to be, like I say, in a restricted area. You can't just meet each other and chat. These days, what's happening, unfortunately, is that the internet has become a dating place where you chat online with the person, and the parents aren't involved in it, and that can be dangerous. Yes, I mean, like these days, obviously, we're using the internet very often for the classes, and if you're trying to arrange marriage at a moment, don't have really much choice because you're not allowed to meet. There's social restrictions and things like this, but there still should be a parent who is there, or someone is there, and the boy and the girl should not be alone together. And also you need to just find out whether you're suitable for each other. Too much information, you've got to leave something for the marriage as well. So by all means, get to know each other, get to find out your likes, dislikes, and whether you're suitable for each other. But it should be, let's say, controlled. There should be a chaperone who is present. And if you are meeting, same thing, the parents or someone there should be there just to make sure, because feelings are feelings, and it's very easy to allow your feelings to get out of control. And even though you may be looking at a suitable partner, maybe even engaged, but feelings can still take over. And this is something, again, which we say to people, that when they have the nikah, even now they've got the nikah, that's still only the first stage. And until they are properly married, then they should not be meeting each other. So sometimes we see even for the Ruxtana, the boy and girl come together. This should not be happening. They still should be segregated. The nikah is only that you've agreed to the marriage. Until you have the Ruxtana, then you should not be alone together. And this is what also people need to understand. Okay, I hope that's answered it. Any other questions there?
Yes, Rabbi Saab, I have a question here. A participant has asked, a Jamaat member I know made it clear that he can get married to non-Ahmadi and won't be expelled from Jamaat because other people have done it the same way and got away with it. It is very concerning. Please shed light on this issue, please. Jazakallah.
So he knows that, does he? Well, good luck to him. He can try. No, there are many, many cases where people have been removed from the Jamaat from this. As I said, not just a couple who's got married, sometimes the parents have got involved. And as I gave you one example where 90 Ahmadis got removed from the Jamaat, got punished. So this is wrong. Yes, sometimes people try to get people to be Ahmadis. And I said, you're just fooling yourself. If they're not genuine, you're just fooling yourself. Yes, of course, we can be deceived, maybe. I remember one time having a person, a family there, and I said, are you dating? He said, no. And the girl was pregnant. So, yes, you can deceive. We're easy to deceive. But at the end of the day, you can't deceive Allah, and you're only deceiving yourselves. But I have seen many times it's happened where we have met the partner, taught them the lessons, and they've gone on to become very, very good Ahmadis. So if the person is serious and studies Islam properly, then they can be a very good partner. But if they're just doing it for name, what's it going to achieve? But this idea that because some people's got away with it, I can get away with it, is a very dangerous idea, and it's not correct. There are many people who are regularly getting removed from the community through marrying, going against Jamaat rules. So this is not the case. Okay, anybody else has got any questions?
Jim Rabbi Sahib, I have another question.
Mashallah.
So the question is, what if you are married to an Ahmadi man who doubt the first revelation to the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam? He doubt if he was revealed it or not. What should you do?
Sorry, you married a person who is a Muslim, Ahmadi Muslim, yeah?
Yes.
But then they're doubting about the revelation given to the Holy Prophet Muhammad.
Yes.
Well, of course, I mean, like I say, this is something which, this is why I'm saying it should all happen beforehand. So these sorts of questions and these sorts of things, these are the things where, like I say, you meet and you try to discuss, you try to bring some missionary or something like that and help the person to understand. This, to me, sounds like the person has claimed to be an Ahmadi Muslim but doesn't really believe at all, hasn't really studied at all. And now, after marriage, now they're starting to study and now they're questioning. So that's too late at that stage. That question should have been done beforehand. But of course, these are answers which we can give them. So if a person has questions like that, they should raise them. We will answer these questions. Obviously, revelation, it's all a question of whether you believe in God. That's the main issue in this particular one. If you do not believe in God, you don't believe in revelation. If you believe that God is a living God, he speaks to people, he speaks to you, he speaks to I, he speaks to the prophets, then of course, why shouldn't the Holy Prophet have received that revelation? And if you look at the life of Muhammad, then it becomes very clear what kind of person that was. And this is one of the books that I normally give to a person who's trying to learn the life of Muhammad, because you can gain a lot of information from that one book, and it's an easy book to read. The book I read was Philosophy and Teachings of Islam. That was a very difficult book to read. But Life of Muhammad, you can read that. It's quite simple. You can read it. You get a lot of information from it. And this is a time when they should read these sort of books and then ask the questions. And then we'll answer those questions for them. Alhamdulillah, we've got all the answers. We don't fear this. We can explain all these things. But if a person doesn't really believe in God, then that's the first thing that's got to be changed. Help him to find God, or help her to find God before marriage. Because if you're marrying, like I say a person who doesn't believe in God, then what's going to make them believe in God? You think that's because you got married now, suddenly they're going to change? So these are the things that needs to be looked into before marriage. Okay.
Rabbi Sab, I got the further comment on this one. If that person is born Ahmadi, then what we have to do?
He needs to learn about his faith, like everyone. I mean, obviously, as I said, there are two types of people. There is a person who's born into this faith. There's a person who's converted, like myself. Now, the thing is, it doesn't matter if you're born or converted. Unless you study, how are you going to know? So just because you're born into a faith is meaningless. You've got to study it. You've got to find out. And this is why I created this website, Why Ahmadi? That Hazur has said that every Ahmadi should look into and question that. Why are they an Ahmadi? Because unless you question your faith, it's going to be weak. Just being born into a faith is meaningless. You've got to learn that faith. So this particular person, whoever it is, should study about their faith. And there are many books, there's internets, there's many, many ways they can learn about Ahmadiyyat. And if they learn about Ahmadiyyat properly, then alhamdulillah, that will help them with their relationship with God and make it very strong. But they need to study. And that's the difference between a person who's born into the faith and a convert, because a convert has left their faith and now they question, they look into it, is it true or not? That's what every Ahmadi needs to do. Whether you're born into the faith or you're converted, you need to question and look into that faith. And that's the only way you're going to become strong in your faith. Without questioning, your faith will always be weak. But alhamdulillah, we've got all the answers. We don't fear questions. Okay.
I have a last question, Rabbi Sab, from chat.
Hopefully not the last. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. So basically, this question is about meher, and the question is: sometime we got from some families the meher demand is quite high. It's a tarbiyat related issue, but how we sometimes this is hindering in the marriages, and how we can deal with this type of thing.
Right. I mean, in the time of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, the minimum is to learn 3 chapters of the Holy Quran. But obviously, we're in a different time now, and because of the conditions, especially in this country, so the expectations are there. The thing is that if you make a promise, we should fulfill that promise. This is very, very important. So we shouldn't just make a promise, I'm going to give £1 million, and you've got the intention of not giving me a penny. Whether it is your meher, whether it is a promise for battle tour, whatever it is, if you make a promise, you should fulfill that promise. Now, it doesn't mean you have to pay it straight away. Like, for instance, when I got married, I think I made a meher of £1,000. I think I've paid it maybe 10 times over now, because I am still paying to this day. I just send some money to my wife's account, and that's been ongoing from the time I got married. So as far as I'm concerned, this is some money for her to spend how she wants. And that's how people should look at it. That you need to fix a sum which you can get to, which will be good for you, good for your wife. And this is why generally we look at the condition of the boy and the girl, and maybe what future it's going to be as well, because they may be students at that time. But if they are hopefully going to get a good job, then it should be there. Presently, the present Khalifa has said that I think it's 6,000 now. At one point it was 10,000, went to 7. Now I think it's 6,000. But still, that's a guideline. At the end of the day, it's between the parents. They should decide the amount. And then, of course, they should present that to Hazur that I want to give this amount. So it can be more, it can be less. But generally, the condition of this country these days, where most people over marriage, which shouldn't be just 1 year, should be for life, you should be able to pay back that 6,000 or whatever number you give. So it shouldn't be a joke. It shouldn't just be for show. It should be a serious thing that you made a promise. And again, this is where in the counseling, I always emphasize this to the couple, that when you make this promise, whatever promise you made, understand you made a promise and you've got to fulfill that promise. However long it takes, like say, it can be like I do, direct debit every month, or it can, if you're rich enough, pay straight away. In some Arab countries, they will just put a lot of money out and say, take whatever you like, and that's it. It's something between the parents that they've got to agree with. But the parents should understand that whatever they agree to, that's actually nothing to do with them. It's not their money, it's the girl's money, and it's for her to spend how she wants. Hopefully, like my wife, she will spend it on the family and house anyway, so it shouldn't be an issue. But if you made a promise, fulfill that promise and make it so it is feasible. It's not ridiculous. Okay, any other questions? Okay, is any questions from anybody else, or are we going to finish it there?
Rabbi Sahib just got another question in chat.
Yeah. All right, yes.
This is a question, just a quick question. My friend has asked me to ask: are marriage couples allowed to hold hand, give hugs or in public?
I mean, that's up to the married couple, of course, if they want to express their love. Generally, holding hands depends where they are. It shouldn't be much of an issue. Hugs, again, it depends. I mean, in the house, of course, they're allowed to hug all the time. Depends where they are, and I suppose there's no harm in it. They're married, and of course, they can hold hands, they can hug. And it depends on the people, how much they want to express their love. So generally, we normally do it using discretion. We don't usually outwardly show, kissing and holding hands and things like that in public too much. But it depends where you are. If you're in streets and stuff like that, and there's not many people around, so yeah, if they want to, it's not something bad. It's fine expressing your love for each other. As I said, love grows, and it's good to express that love and reassure your partner that you have feelings and you're happy with the partner. And these are ways in which you can express that. So, yeah, there's no harm.
Jazakallah, Rabbi Sahib.
Okay, so is that it? Any more questions, or should we finish it there? What's the time? If there's anything else, otherwise we'll finish it there. Okay, we didn't get onto the other subject, which is about Hajj. So next week, inshallah, we'll cover that one. But I think if everybody's finished, we'll finish this with silent prayer today. Last chance. Okay. Let's do silent prayer. Please join me in silent prayer. Bismillah. I'm sorry, I didn't. Ameen. Okay, assalamu alaikum.